Brings me back to how I met Charles. That's interesting.
Oh man, we're gonna have to have an TV MA warning on these episodes.
It all started with Clint, though.
It is Clint's a bad influence. He is a true black hat.
He is a terrible influence, but he makes Honey laugh. So I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SEO Fight Club. Sorry I'm a little late this morning. I was preparing slides for SEO spring training, and some of the things I wanted to look into required me to disable JavaScript while looking at Google search result source code to see what they're changing on the fly. And then when it came time, I forgot I disabled JavaScript, and Zoom doesn't work without it. So, yeah, I shot myself in the foot in the name of science. And so I hope you all realize that even I make lots of mistakes each and every day. And
Like,
so
like not turning your camera on. Just
uh, I I turned it on when I went into Zoom and it turned it off. There we go.
there we
Sorry
go.
about that.
Look at that.
So just like a pro, let me enable sharing. And so tomorrow I'm going to Phoenix for SEO spring training. So I'll be out for the week. So if you need to get a hold of me, I'll be on the road. So limited support during that time. The week after, wide open availability. So if you need training or some of my time, schedule it for next week, latter half.
And no
Um,
SEO Fight Club next week.
no, we won't be doing it from the road. So sorry about that. Another week off of SEO Fight Club. But Clint and I wouldn't be here for it, and I don't. I suppose if Lee or Charles wanted to pilot a show, we could set that up. But it's up to them if they want to fly solo. Um, and
Wouldn't feel the same without you, Ted or Clint.
uh, we uh, We also ask that you ask your questions early if you have questions that are urgent, because sometimes we don't get to all of them. So just, ask them early. We're also open to topics, but we have a presentation from Charles. I have no idea what it is, but he promises it'll be a good one. So with that, I'll remind people there might be a possibility to get last minute tickets for SEO spring training. You would have to get them today and get your airfare and hotel today. So that's about as last minute as you can get. And I'm not even sure. They might be sold out. So I don't know at this point. But if you really wanted to go and you're on the fence, I mean, now or never. All right. So take it away, Charles.
You are muted, sir.
Unmute myself. All right, keeping it as professional as always. All right, I assume everybody can see my screen and hear me.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, so we had so about GSC data versus log file data. And it's kind of the question of how accurate is GSC data. And I know Ted will say immediately it's not accurate. And I agree, it's not super accurate. But I figured maybe we can put some real numbers onto it. So previously on Fight Club, we talked about this article, and actually this article was brought up by our friend Clint, and I know you had brought it up in your weekly webinar, podcast, YouTube show, whatever you want to call it. And you kind of posed the question about this 130-day rule, about indexation strategy. And we got into a whole conversation about that, which got me thinking about looking at GSC. And when you go to GSC, if you go to the pages report, you get all these different statuses. But what exactly do they mean? What does Google mean when it says it's indexed versus crawled, not indexed versus discovered, not indexed? What exactly is happening on the background? Because I know what I think is happening. I would imagine that if it was indexed, I could do a search or I could do a site: command and I'd find the page. I would imagine if it's crawled, not indexed, I would do a search or site: command. I wouldn't find the page. And Google found it maybe once, maybe twice. And discovered, Google knows about the URL, but has never crawled the page and shouldn't have it indexed. So that's how I see those. I'll pause for a moment to see if you guys have a kind of a different way you look at these. Do you guys think about them in any different way?
No, I mean, I think I'm thinking about them exactly the way you are until I saw some of the data that you were showing the other day that you're going to share.
You're not allowed to adjust your answer. I think the intent is to be how you describe it. That's how.
Yeah. So, so I decided, all right, let's look at some data. So I took a page, a site in GSC. I picked a page that has not been crawled since April 11th. I did this maybe, I'm looking at my calendar now, maybe a week ago, not even a full week ago. So it had been a week since it had been crawled. I did a quick site: command on the URL and didn't show up. So Google's telling the truth. It's not indexed. So I decided, all right, I'm going to look at my server logs. Now, to use server logs, I use Screaming Frog. I have no affiliation with them in any way, shape, or form. But just this is what I use. I looked at my Screaming Frog, and then I looked at, you'll see in the bottom, I looked at all Googlebots. So I only looked at Googlebots because I only care about Googlebot data. And I was looking at
one second here, Charles, just to make sure, because you have Screaming Frog, and this is the Screaming Frog Log Analyzer, which is a different product. It's not part of the Screaming Frog crawler for those that are looking for this feature.
Good point. So this can get very confusing because folks, we all call the crawler Screaming Frog, but technically it's not called Screaming Frog. It's called SEO Spider. So Screaming Frog is the company, SEO Spider is their crawler, and Log File Analyzer is the Log File Analyzer part of the tool. So this is Screaming Frog's Log File Analyzer. Good clarification.
Yeah, thanks.
So what I did is I looked at everything from the past, like since January 1st, you see on the bottom here, everything since January 1st, 2024, and it was up through April 20th, so that was the date I did it, and it was only looking at Googlebots. So I looked at this page. This was the page that was last crawled on April 11th, and you can see the initial crawl was November 6th. It was crawled again on the 8th, again on the February, and then it was crawled twice on April 11th. So the GSC data looking solid. Looking over here, this information, this is the user agent that Google sends over. I know by looking at this that this is the smartphone mobile bot or smartphone indexer that's looking at it, as opposed to the desktop. We'll see the desktop in other crawl data in a few minutes. So I picked another page. I picked page number 2. And here was something that had not been crawled since November 9th, 2024. I'm like, all right, let's see about this one. So I checked into site: command. Google's telling the truth. Page is not in the index in any way, shape, or form. So then I looked at the log file data and I said, uh-oh. There's been 4 crawls in the past 16 months. The last crawl was October 2024. I'm sorry, the initial crawl was October 2024. The last crawl was April 11th. According to the log file data, it was never crawled on the 9th, even though Google says the last crawl was on the 9th. I will put a little caveat in here. I could have missed a log file download, so it's possible that I just messed it up and it did crawl on the 9th, on November 9th. But it definitely has been crawled many times since November. I'm sorry, I'm just looking here. It does say November 9th, 2024.
I was like, I know my glasses aren't that big.
Yeah, no, maybe
there's data, there's metrics, and there's KPI.
Yeah,
I'm getting all this messed up here.
GSC's last crawled is still wrong.
GSC's last crawled is still wrong. You're absolutely right. But it's weird. I don't know why I put that there. This might have been a holdover from another slide. I might have just screwed that up. So sorry about that. So GSC's data is still wrong, but we can see that, yeah, it has been crawled. So I picked a third page, and I picked a page not crawled, and I didn't do a slide for every single thing because I figured I'd get redundant. I picked a page that hadn't been crawled since October 26, 2024. Did a quick site colon command. It has not appeared in the sitemap, so that's cool, or in Google's index, that's cool. Oh boy. So here is October 26, 2024. And as you can see, it's been crawled a whole Nipsey Russell bunch of times since then and before then. And interestingly enough, that was when it was crawled by Google's desktop crawler. So this is the desktop crawler, and this longer one is the mobile crawler. So we can see this one just straight up wrong. Like this isn't even close to being accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided then let's go to discovered, not crawled. So discovered, not indexed. I say crawled, but I would imagine that if it's not indexed, it probably wasn't crawled, but we'll see. And I only actually, this is one thing, I only had one page on one domain, so it's not not a big data set. The sites that I have that are really large, I don't get log files for all of them. So I went to, it was actually as a sitemap.html. I can see it says last crawled. It doesn't even know when it won't even give you a date when it was last crawled, although we know from the lines here that it was at least 90 days ago. So it's safe to assume that it's not crawled regularly, but it doesn't know about it. Check google.com, it's not in there, so that's fine. And at this point, I say, are you really surprised? So this says, this was discovered, not indexed. I would imagine it's not regularly crawled, but if you imagine that it's not regularly crawled, you're straight up wrong. This was March 2025, going all the way back to January 2024. So this site got visited this page got visited multiple times. Google took a little breather, then came back in July, took another little breather, and came back in March 2025. A little side note, again, you can see that it is desktop mobile bot or desktop bot. This is the smartphone, and this number here, this is the build. So you can see what version of Google's hitting you. So this is, I know we've done this in the past where I looked at Chrome builds, and you can see, am I getting crawled by the new bot or not? If Google changes, doesn't update, they have to update their bots. So the bots are just stupid. So when the algorithm updates, they have to update the bot to know what to grab. So I'll take a pause here and let anybody jump in and interject if they want. Otherwise, I just threw a bunch of data at you guys.
So I'm just going to go, with GSC data, what the hell? That's kind of where.
And this was NA for last crawled. Google wouldn't even tell us when this was last crawled.
Well, I mean, the status discovered, not indexed, you'd have to distinguish. So they got a crawled, not indexed, discovered, not indexed. Discovered, the difference between those two, you would assume is, okay, not crawled, because they've had the discovered, not crawled. But, that's not accurate here either. Is it just bad data in the GSC data warehouse, or,
I wonder if there's like some sort of a concept of updating Google Search Console. So like the search database and the Googlebot visitation, that's all kind of real time-ish. Whereas Google Search Console might be something they update once a week or once a month, or something is different about the data propagation. And I wonder if there are complications like on the Google update side of things, if they don't just pause Google Search Console and create these blackout windows until they resume, and they never go back and fix them. So it's kind of like a best efforts going forward, but if it was out for a few days, they're not going to go back and repair it.
Well, Search Console data updates like every 3 days. Typically, it's on 3-day cycles around updates. It may go 6, 7, 8 days between updates.
Yeah, so you see, like recent stuff is working again, but we have these past windows that are just foobar.
Yeah, but Charles's data has current and historical. So even when you're looking at some of the stuff, if it's popping up, that last crawled April 23rd or whatever from this one, and this one over here showing it's never, been crawled, and yet it was crawled on April 23rd. I mean, it's the same window,
Well, but
crawl window.
the log files are real time, and Google Search Console is probably nothing remotely close to real time.
No, I mean
And
it's
so,
a 3 day lag. But what I'm saying is, if I heard you, if there's certain periods where they didn't pull data or didn't pull it properly, well, Charles has data that's in the same window that's rolled into Search Console in one instance, but not in the other. So then you're just looking at it and saying, are certain uh, pages, URLs, just flat out wrong,
So I think I know where you're going with this, Lee, and I think I agree with you. So Ted, what you're saying would completely explain this one where it said last crawl was the 9th, but it's had a crawl since then. Maybe there's a blackout, so that didn't get up.
but
totally get that.
The other
but it
concept
doesn't explain this one.
The other concept we have to apply here is that from the very early days of Google Webmaster Tools, Google has said that this is a sampling of your data. It's not authoritative of all pages. So maybe what we're seeing here is that sampling effect where there are URLs that they don't maintain in certain tables. I'm not saying I know what's going on. I'm just saying there is a possibility here that this is just how it's architected and is, it's sampled data. They probably have outage windows. They probably don't go back to fix lots of things. That would be my guess as to what's happening here. But I do agree that, yeah, the data does not make sense if you're going page by page to try to figure out what's going on with your site. This tool will probably let you down.
Well, then the question is, and I think this raises, a number of different questions. One is, what's the status of my page? If I can't go to Search Console and see that it's indexed in Search Console, and after the 3 day lag, so if today it updates, it'll update as of, I don't know, what is it, 26th or 27th, that, it would be updating through that period of time. Okay, then 3 days after that, we'll get the fresher one, and it should show my page is, indexed or not indexed correctly. But here
I think
it's not. And then you can't use the site colon command because we know that has errors.
on a page by page basis where you're trying to check all pages, you have to go to search and do diagnostic queries. Because Search Console, it has the lag, it probably has the outage windows, it's a sampling. There's so many layers of problem in Search Console that if you wanted to check all the pages on your site, I'm not sure it's a tool that can do that. Small sites, sure, but there's probably a scale at which you can't play that game.
So, Ted, I would agree. Outages and lags explains this one perfectly. Maybe there was an outage, maybe there's a lag, no big deal. The sampling, when I start seeing things like this, I'm thinking, all right, well, sampling, this is a really bad sample then. So is this one where it's come back regularly. In my mind, sampling, outages, lag doesn't explain this. This just looks straight up wrong.
Well,
like those last two.
It depends. Is it a sampling of dates? Is it a sampling of URLs? Because if the URL was just excluded from the sample, so it depends what they're sampling, and that's something we don't necessarily know. We haven't really tried to figure out how they pick the things they pick. There might be a way to test for it.
I also found it interesting that the bytes, now they varied a little bit, but sometimes they were significantly different. You can see this is only 1600, 1600, 1600, and those three are consistent amongst themselves. So it makes me, I think we discussed this last week, or Ted, you brought it up last week, how Google could be doing something different on different crawls. And that's what this would suggest to me, that when Google came, it's doing something a little different on these different crawls. And I
Yeah.
believe it did the same thing on this other one. Let's just look
Mhm.
at it real quick. Only once was it significantly different. Everything else was relatively in the same.
And that's so significantly different. I wonder what they were grabbing there. So
Yeah.
that could have been headers only, or maybe that's a specialized bot that only grabs schema. I don't know.
Now, this is a pretty, all these pages they're from my test site, so they're all pretty sparse. There may be a paragraph or two of content. There's, title tag, meta description, canonical. There's no schema.
It it would be
There's nothing crazy
interesting
on there.
to find out if your protocol headers were, 1600 bytes, is your JSON LD 1600 bytes. What in the page is 1600 bytes?
Yeah, that's a good question. It definitely isn't JSON LD because these pages don't have that. So there's not much to the page. They're pretty small. Interesting side, I looked at these number of bytes, and I looked at it next to the HTML page. It's on my hard drive, and it's a different number. The page itself is maybe 4 kilobytes. It's not that much. It's smaller than the number that Google's showing in this log, which I found interesting in and of itself. I realize more is happening on a web server than on
You,
my hard disk, though.
to actually compare, you would have to load the HTML in Chrome and then inspect the page in the DOM inspector and then copy the outer HTML. Because Googlebot is going to use Chrome to render, it's going to run it through Tidy and fix everything that needs fixing, and then it'll use the rendered DOM HTML. So that's probably the bulk of the byte size difference.
Interesting. Okay, I'll give that a shot. So before everybody loses all faith from GSC, sometimes it was very reliable. So these are 3 pages on a test server. And when I went and I looked, the log files validated all 4 dates. So those were last crawled dates, and it lined up perfectly on that specific site. So it could be a page level issue or even a site level issue where some pages are just wrong, whereas other sites and or pages are 100% on. So it's not always wrong, which I think makes it even worse. Sometimes GSC tells you the gosh darn truth. Sometimes it lies, and you don't know when it's lying and when it's telling you the truth.
Well, I
Yeah.
guess that kind of means it would be cool to have a tool that would say which URLs have latest update status in Search Console. And if a page you're working on doesn't, then you know you're working with something that's potentially bad.
Hmm.
Yeah, I wish Google would tell you the issue, the data issue, if it would just simply say, "Oh, this URL didn't make the sample this month. It might be here next month, but we recommend you check your web logs or something else." There's probably something better Google could be doing to make Search Console less confusing.
Indeed. So is the data even fake? So here's just some results from another test I ran. They related, but it's not exactly the same. What I had is, so I had we have 3 groups of pages. We have indexed, and we have crawled, currently not indexed, and discovered, currently not indexed. And what I did is I put a link I made 3 pages. I made an index page, crawled not indexed, discovered not indexed. And then I put that page on 3 index pages. And then I put the next link on 3 crawled pages, but not indexed. And I put the discovered not indexed link on 3 different discovered, currently not indexed pages. And I was curious if they would get crawled by Google. And what I found was that all 3 were crawled, actually on the same date. So I did this like on the 15th, I think it was. They all got crawled by the 18th. And on the crawled not indexed, it actually got crawled twice by Google. Because that was really the next step or the next evolution of my thought is, okay, is Google even crawling these pages? What about links on these pages? Is Google crawling these pages? So not only is Google visiting pages that are indexed, crawled not indexed, and discovered not indexed, but it's following links on all that pages. And that goes back to, I know Clint, you did this test in SIA years ago, and we talked about it. We've talked about it a couple of times where a link on a de-indexed site still ends up giving you credit. And this kind of shows the mechanism that Google's crawling all these darn things, regardless of what it says its status is. It's definitely visiting the pages, and it definitely seems to be crawling the pages that are linked on those pages. So I don't want to call this data fake. I don't think that's the right word to use. I just want to say Google's being very misleading. So I say the GST
You don't
data
have a
is off.
synonym. You do not have
Yeah,
a
I
synonym.
don't know what word to use. So I said
Well,
wrong. I think wrong's a better word,
I
but really more misleading.
I think the best word to describe it is incomplete.
I would agree. I would agree. My other question was, is the API data any better? So, Ted, I'm actually glad that we're not going to have a meeting. We're not going to have a call next week because I need some time. I got to rerun this exact same test, but I'm going to use the GSC API data and see if it gives me the exact same results or not. Or does it give me another set of results? So I don't know. So that's the next test.
If
And there's
it's
a test.
Oh, I was going to say, if
Yeah.
it's like the Google Ads API, it won't give you more records, but it will likely give you access to more fields of data for each record. So you kind of have to look at it both ways. Does it give me more records, or does it give me more fields per record, or both?
I am going to compare those dates that they say they last crawled to the dates that I find on my log files and say, are they the same or are they not the same? And are they giving me the same data as GSC, or is it giving me maybe updated data? So perhaps the API knows that Googlebot crawled this page on the 11th, but it didn't update in GSC for whatever reason. And that's the next test I have to launch. There's a test I'm currently in progress with working on right now. And this actually could be an arc of a couple episodes that we can discuss it. It's, will links on these pages get crawled? And then the next question, more important, is will they even count? I'm in the process of doing a test with indexers to find out what indexers even do anything. And the results are very, very interesting. I'll tease a little bit and say some of you are wasting money. Some of you are spending your money wisely, but some of you are completely wasting money. So that's what I got.
Very, very cool. I'm just kind of reeling, thinking about how we could try to figure out test for what's included in Search Console and report on what's not. So you'd know whether or not you'd want to, use Search Console for a particular page or not for diagnosing a problem.
Yeah, I was going to say, Charles, hit me up later today. I have a couple of ideas. You might have some data on non-test sites that you could use to diagnose what you're seeing in your test data.
I will do that. Although I got to be careful when I hit you up, Lee, you're like, okay, what you got to do, Charles, is make 20 different pages on 20 different sites.
Hey.
That's what you hit me with before. I was like,
we can do this one strictly with probably Screaming Frog and Search Console data.
I like the sound of that.
It's easier than actually testing, but it's probably data that may give us some indications.
But I always end up coming back saying, all right, I got to test all this. And I'm mapping out a test right now that I was just starting to talk about until you turned on the recording, Ted. But I'm mapping out a test right now I want to know, does Google crawl it? Does Google crawl the link? And does that link boost? Yes or no?
Well, and you might have to consider some very fundamental possibilities, like how does Google treat canonical versus non-canonical URLs, because they're not going to fill infinite URLs in the system. So is it only canonical? Were you searching canonical? Is there a canonical mismatch with what you looked for? And so there may be very fundamental things we need to test too.
So funny that you should bring that up on my
He set you up for that one, didn't he?
yeah, you were reading my mind, Ted, which is both awesome and terrifying at the same time. On my either discovered not indexed or crawled not indexed page, I accidentally put the wrong canonical on it. And I figured that out because Google crawled that URL. So not only did Google crawl the page, not only did Google go to a page that says it's not indexing, but it crawled the link on that page, and then the link that it crawled had a bad canonical on it, and so it visited that page as well. So it seems like Google visits everything. You just got to give it a path, and it'll just gobble it all up.
And that right there might be the discovery of the year. If Google automatically crawls the canonical, imagine the shenanigans you could do with that.
I have considered that myself many times.
I have no idea. I just write.
And then it makes me think, what about href lengths? Does it crawl all those too? Like, what kind of shenanigans could you do with that?
The first test I'd be interested in is what happens if you have 30 canonical tags with different URLs. Is Googlebot going to crawl all of them? Is this an indexer exploit? I need to run a test.
Clint is being
I will neither confirm nor deny
quiet.
whether a test. I'm sorry, Lee, go ahead.
I was going to say Clint is being unsettlingly quiet.
It's just in regards to the canonical crawling it, honestly, that's not a surprise. It's kind of the point of the canonical, I would think, right? So if I mean duplicates and etc. So this is the original, and the Googlebot goes and checks the original. It seems to me that makes sense. So
this verifies things.
I don't know. I won't go discovery of the year. It's pretty cool because it verifies that they're actually doing it versus it being turned on or off. You know what I mean? Like, are they ignoring it?
Well, if they crawl multiple canonicals, I'm saying discovery of the year.
Yeah. That's like moving the graveyard. Let's move the yardstick and what's cool and what's not. Yeah. I would say a cool test in regards to the canonical would take your test page on one domain and canonical as a test page on another domain and see if that crawls. Then you
so Clint, that's actually what I accidentally did.
There you go.
So domain 1 canonical to domain 2 by accident because it was a copy and paste error. Domain 2, the page that did not exist showed up as a 404 in my log file. So I was like, hey, what the heck where'd this come from? And I realized I crossed domain canonical by accident. So Google crawled the crawled not index page, found the link, went to that page, saw the canonical pointing to another domain, and then tried to go to that page as well.
Trying to go to that too.
This verifies what I've seen at enterprise sites for years and years is that if Google finds a link, even if it's not linked, if Google finds a URL, it will try to crawl it. Its bot cannot be
significant link in schema works.
Yeah.
Right? So
it doesn't seem to matter the size of the site. Like these are dinky little test sites. These are not, this is not Verizon.com or Fox.com or any of this. This is some dinky little site that regularly doesn't get indexed.
So it brings the question up, am I doing black hat SEO and bad link building if I do 100 of Lee's his SaaS? If I make 100 of those pages and I set the canonical, but I don't actually put an internal link on there, knowing that it's going to link to that page and Google's going to crawl it, am I doing black hat SEO? And what am I actually taking out? Because it'll be a good way to test how important anchor text is in regards to relevance of a link. So if I have 100 how to build engine pages linking to an SEO page, does that change the ranking of the SEO page in a bad way, like it would if I had anchor text? saying how to build an SEO.
So you're basically canonicalling an irrelevant page.
To
100 of them in this example.
Yeah. To a ranking page.
Years ago, I tried a test like that. So when I was with Verizon, the biggest problem we had was that we weren't allowed to optimize the pages because somebody in brand didn't like using a certain word. So I ran a test to see what if I made a bunch of optimized pages and canonicaled them to my non-optimized page, will I pass the SEO, the optimization? It did not seem to do it.
It did. You just weren't doing it right.
Or possibly. That's possible. That's always a possibility. I might have messed it up.
And I say you weren't doing it right because I showed this in the first SEO spring training I was talking, where I talked, and I took a couple of agency guys that are there, and I turned their websites into porn and canonicaled them to their actual pages with no internal linking, and it dropped their websites. And it was actually a good exploit until Bill Hartzer outed it to the world because, you know, he needed info content. Google fixed it for a while. So it could be bad.
Can you help a page or can you only hurt a page though? Did you just
I was
hurt
using
pages?
it for reputation management. So I was making more money hurting the pages.
Right.
It's interesting.
But that is a good test. Like one, is that back? And then two, can you use it for good as well as, well, in reputation management, it's all good. So.
All right, let's get to some questions here. Would love to hear advice for a client who has been ranking well in a state, but is now going national and wants to rank nationally. Work changes and pricing changes. Well, I think you want to consider the fundamental strategy because you can do a lot of harm if they're relying on that local revenue stream to continue to exist unharmed, you know, to make payroll and to afford your services. So before you rush in and make them national, you might consider maintaining what they have as a local part of the business and then have a slight rebranding for the national part of the business on a separate domain so you're not doing harm to that local presence. Because normally it's when people try to change, and I've seen the reverse cause harm. You know, we're a national business, but we want to pick up our local customers too, and then they go hyper local on part of their website, and they lose a lot of their national traffic. And so that's why I feel like you need to think about the strategy and what are you risking. And then determine the price based on the strategy that you're doing. Are you SEOing two sites independently? Are you leaving one site and developing a new one? You know, so those things would impact your cost. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's where I would go because you can, you know, you can send mixed signals. You can say, hey, we're relevant nationally, we're relevant, you know, in Seattle. And the problem is that whichever one of those wins is going to diminish the other one, or possibly it confuses Google and you don't do well in either. So it's always possible that a brand can have a sister company, even under, you know, similar brand name. So SEO Tool Lab and then SEO Tool Lab Seattle.com, you know, you could pick up local, you know, SEO, you know, for people that wanted to stop by and pick up the CD to install, you know,
Yeah.
Cora and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the way I would do it.
Not to be contrarian,
Excellent.
Franchises do this all the time. They start out in a state or a city, and then they expand as they sell their franchises and move out of the city and then out of the state and nationally, all on the same website. They do it all the time. But I think the answer to your question is really it's more about how many, like how are they just going it's hard not knowing the niche. So you're making this example out of thin air. So we'll just use roofing. Are they selling roofing supplies, the the metal tiles, all that stuff, or are they doing roofing? Because now you have two different strategies, as Ted talked about, that you have to figure out in regards to, are they selling the roofing supplies? Well, then they're probably going to be an e-com based platform, right? Versus if they're doing roofing, then now you have location pages. Location pages is a lot easier than the e-com based, because e-com you're taking on Merchant Center, Google Shopping, all that stuff that goes along with it. So is it, would I recommend, I mean, two sites is always better than one. If all roads lead to you, then who gives a shit how they got there? I would probably do the two sites if they were going from, just Dallas's roofing supply to nationwide roofing supply. I would do what Ted said and create two websites under probably two different brands, and then build out the national one until I didn't want to run the local one anymore. And then you just rely on your national, and you have this, it's already another brand that's already established. That's probably how I would handle that. But if it's a service based, like a roofing company that actually does roofs, you can move nationally just by adding the pages to your website. It's going to be fine. Google figures that out.
Yeah, but let's clarify something. In terms of national, what you're talking about with the franchise model is actually locations across the country, not, it's different if I was searching for, cat socks or something like that, then
Right, but when you do
rankings are going to be the same. Yeah, because there's not a local component to that search.
when you do a franchise, though, there is a national campaign that goes along with it in regards to the brand. So you have this, we call it corporate section of the website, which is generally the homepage, and then the about us, privacy, and all that stuff, right? And then a corporate blog that did all the broad level information type content. And then we also had the location pages with location set blogs. Like it was actually sub to the location page, so there was no bleed over. Like this franchise is writing about Dallas stuff, and this one's writing about Houston stuff, and they're all linked only to those appropriate sections. So there is a lot of siloing, and to kind of get that right, planning ahead on it. But yeah, in a franchise, you're still like do a Starbucks Yuma or Starbucks. There's still a brand sec where the national, where I want to do some research or whatever in that franchise model.
All right. Can you recommend any tools for super low search volume terms? The example given, a news site with no GSC data. My go-to is Google Trends. It's the most underrated SEO tool for search volume. The way you use it is you kind of take your minimum bar of a keyword that you know inside and out, and you say, I like any keyword that's as good as this one or better. And so that's your minimum threshold. And then you compare all other keywords to that one in Google Trends. And then you can go, wow, it's, 2x my minimum bar. No, it's 10% the minimum bar. But the way you use Google Trends is you compare things you don't know to things you do know. And that'll give you a lot more insight into Google's search volumes than the keyword planner.
I hate to be contrarian on this one, but the keyword planner, I mean, it gives you some indication, even the buckets, are somewhat accurate. They're not, precise, but they're somewhat accurate. So you can get sort of a low, medium, high volume keyword indication from that. The other one, if you're interested in doing something like that, is run, what was it? Power Suggest Pro used to be the one, where it would grab, it would scrape all of the Google Auto Suggest, for a keyword family. And then you just take all those and run them through, your keyword tools to get, the search volume numbers for them, because the ones that show like zero search volume, but they show up in auto suggest, that there's search volume there because they wouldn't be in auto suggest without a bunch of people searching for the damn thing. So it's kind of you can find the best of the low search volume.
So once again, if you guys would just work together, you'd have a better system.
Okay.
What I would recommend is take the auto suggest, plug them into trends, and then you'll see which ones, because auto suggest is great. I love it, but you don't know what's better than what. Plug it into trends. Trends can give you the data, but then scroll down on Google Trends and look for the breakouts and look for the top trending, and you can find another variation. So that's what I would do. And once again, Ted and Lee just have to work together more often. Stop fighting
No,
all
we're
the
not
time.
working. I'm not working with Ted. And I would say your system is way too complicated, sir.
That's what I do. I take a system and I complicate it. You know that about me.
That's what it's enterprise. You still got that enterprise mindset.
Darn right.
Yeah, Stefan responded to this question too and recommended a tool called Low Fruits. I haven't used that one, so I don't know what it is, but it might be worth looking into. All right, let's see. JP says, I really think indexation is based on a query quota. So, based on what they know about the keywords that the page is being indexed for. That kind of makes sense. Like, popular topics or trending topics might be timely. Um, Probably part of their algorithm is that way at a minimum.
Well, I guess that would be indexed versus served, right?
Yeah.
So we could have 1 million pages indexed on query quota, but reasonably search people are never going past 200. So why show more than 600, for example? So now we have a query quota for that. So now let's go and score those pages for the top 600 and sprinkle in some of the others for testing.
Yeah.
I think go ahead, Kid.
Oh, I was gonna say I think I've seen evidence in the past for what JP is suggesting there with the top SEO factors website when it refused to appear for the keyword top SEO factors. Instead, it was ranking for all these SEM rush keywords because I had mentioned SEM Rush twice on the page in the table of factors. And then when I removed those two mentions, it shot to the moon for the top SEO factor related keywords. And so it did feel like there was a system that was saying, hey, we have volume for SEM Rush, but we don't have a lot of good documents for that need. And so it was trying to force my page to fit that volume they didn't have good answers for. And so, yeah, there could be a system like that in play. Plausible in my opinion.
And I think one of the things that I see in a lot of the questions around indexation is sort of an implicit assumption that, my page is amazing, my site is amazing. I can't imagine why it's not showing up, especially not on page one, but it's not even in the top, 100 or 200 there. What could possibly be the problem with Google? Because it's certainly not my page. That's where a lot of these, the underlying subtext of a lot of these questions are. I've done everything right. Google's not indexing my page. What's the issue?
And that query quota problem I had with SEM Rush on top SEO factors, that's a good example of an SEO problem I would otherwise not be able to diagnose without Google Search Console's bad data. Because the way you diagnose that issue is you look at the queries a URL is getting impressions for, and if none of them make sense for what you've tuned the page for, that's how you diagnose this. So even though Google Search Console is flawed, there are a few problems that can only be diagnosed in Search Console. Let's see. I apologize for the subject change. Is anyone attending spring training this week or the Las Vegas May 20th events? I wasn't aware of the Las Vegas ones. Damn, I would have liked to have gone to those. I will be at the spring training. I believe Clint will too. My understanding is Lee and Honey won't be this year, which is a bummer. And I don't know if Charles is going or not.
Unfortunately, not this year.
Okay, so it's just Clint and I. So look for us at the bar. Always happy to talk shop at these events. It's my favorite thing. Let's see. Have you ever given up on a website since nothing worked no matter what? Yes. And I've seen just about every expert I know give up on that same website. So yes, there are problems even the best SEOs can't figure out because we don't know everything. And in this particular case, my theory is that Google has a stealth penalty on a website that it'll just never rank again, and they won't tell you why, and they won't give you a manual action. It's just scorched earth for some reason, and you have no recourse and you have no idea why. And so I do believe those exist. I also think they're quite rare. I've only seen one or two that we couldn't figure out why this thing will never work. But they do exist, and yeah, I kind of recommend, if you feel like you're in that case, pick a new keyword, new domain, get some distance from it, see if you can get the new keyword in a new area, new industry ranking. And if it's a piece of cake, then it's not what you're doing that's the problem. There's something else. So if it's super easy to rank in roofing, but it's impossible for you to rank in bicycle tours, just know there is a state at which even us gurus can't figure it out. You guys, have you ever had to quit on anything?
But there have been times when I might ought to have, but I never give up. I will put something on the shelf for a little while, but then I'll look. I mean, I'll give you an example. This was probably 15 years ago. I was, regularly a science fair judge at my son's school. And this kid had this experiment where he wanted to see if aluminum cans dissolve differently in different acids. So he had all of his stuff up, and, the results were varied, not which, it wasn't consistent across the thing. So I was asking him, were they all Coke cans? Were they all bought from the same batch? I was trying to figure out with him, the alternative, solutions. Couldn't do it. And it was 4 years later. I snuck out onto the golf course one Thursday, afternoon and stuff like that. And I was paired up with these three old retired dudes. And they said, "Oh, you sneaking out of the office?" "No, I'm just out here playing day." "What about you guys? You retired?" "Yeah." "Where'd you work?" And this one guy worked at the Coca-Cola bottling plant. And I was like, "Let me ask you some questions," because now I had it. Was it any chance that the Coke cans are variable thickness, the aluminum? And he goes, "No. They measure that shit down to the micron because it's the most expensive component. So they do that. And I was like, damn it. And I kind of told him the story, and he goes, but the spray that they spray the inside of the liner and the inside of the cans is variable thickness. It can vary by the different heads on the machines. So that explained the difference in this thing. Years later, and it wasn't my science fair project, and I could not give up on the fucking problem. So I will
Yeah,
shelf something, but I won't give up on it.
I'm still academically invested in solving these cases,
Mhm.
but the one I'm mentioning, I know for a fact that you've looked at it, Lee. I know that Clint's looked at it. I
Yeah.
know that Honey's looked at it. I know that Brian Cato has looked at it. I know that Roman has looked at it. I think Charles might have looked at it too, and a number of other prominent SEOs. Problem not solved. So
Yeah, but
I think
what'll
it
happen is
happens to everyone
one
at some
day
point.
somebody will have a test or something like that, and we're like, ooh, maybe that site, maybe this could, lead us to some insight onto that, weird behavior that's going on there. So
Yeah. I probably revisit it like 3 times a year.
yeah.
And unfortunately that poor SEO, I mean, he's suffering. But yeah, there are occasions where the standard playbook doesn't work, and that should be a very loud clue to you that something is wrong. Because the standard playbook should always work at least
Somewhat.
somewhat, and if it's never working ever at all, well, we have 500 people in this group over here where the standard playbook is working just fine. And so, yeah, if the fundamentals don't ever work for you, something is very wrong.
Mhm.
Um, but also keep in mind if you're trying to rank for payday loans and it's your first time ranking a web page, that's a different problem.
Yeah.
So there is a reality too.
Well, so, it comes down to the other question is how good is your playbook? Does it, has it worked, 100 times in a row and the site is just dead? Or, are you have a playbook that you think works and it's not working? Those are, different as well.
Yeah, in this case, it's kind of like the inverse Midas touch, where everything he touches turns to crap.
Hmm.
And, that's not normal.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where did I leave off?
I think the next one was what is the 80/20 principle in technical SEO?
Well, I often say that like Cora is good for about 80% of the keywords you'll ever be asked to tune for by clients. And so to me, it's about the applicability of a tool for a type of keyword. And for a keyword like payday loans, Cora's not going to do a whole hell of a lot for you because they have a 20-year head start in link building. And, there's nothing you can do that will negate that. You have to compensate for it in some way with your SEO. Um, so just simply being on page tuned, like the pages that rank isn't necessarily what you need to compete for a keyword like that. Um, and so yeah, I like to think how applicable is a methodology for a certain difficulty of keywords. And so for a long time people were talking about Google stacks, and that was something that actually worked for a certain difficulty of keyword. Now, the difficulty on that was typically pretty low for what it would work on. There was a caliber of keyword where, getting some Google stacks probably wasn't going to do the trick. And so, in those cases, it was more like 20% of keywords were applicable. Um, So yeah, you have to think about how applicable a technique is going to be for a difficulty class of keyword, I think. What do you think, Lee?
I think, well, I agree. I think with respect to technical SEO, I found that, this is where Ted and I will disagree, and they're coming from two different perspectives. I find that very simple checks often reveal most of your technical SEO problems. Like, for example, if in your sitemap you've got 1,000 pages on your website, and you go into Search Console, and it shows you've got 20 pages indexed, well, you have an indexation problem. If it shows that you've got 100,000 pages not indexed, you've got a crawl problem, probably an infinite crawl problem, or some sort of canonical problem, or something else going on there. Do you have a whole bunch of 404 pages in there? That's a problem. Do you have a status where it says blocked by robots.txt? Most of the things that we have that I find that are the 80% of the technical problems are just stupid little shit that we've done to ourselves. And they're real easy to diagnose with something like that. You don't even need, screaming frog or other things. Now, if those things don't reveal what you've got going on, then Ted has, I don't know, 5-day process that he goes through to do the deep dive on that sort of stuff. But what would the 80/20 be on that one, Ted?
Well, you're right that the common mistakes are going to be what you find 80% of the time. Uh, but the common mistakes don't amount to 80% of the problems that you could have. So the reasons why a page won't index go into the many tens of thousands of possibilities. So even though a small number of common problems are typically what you find, you have to know a very vast amount of things to be able to handle most technical SEO problems. And so that's the difference. I like the fact that there's a checklist that can help you out a majority of the time. But then you actually need an actual technical SEO when those fail.
Yeah.
What do you think, Clint?
That's painful. Obviously, you need to read the book on 80/20 principle.
Well, but the
So
problem
keeping it
is when
this
you're in the 20,
80/20.
it's 10,000 things.
Well, it could be 10,000 things. It's technical SEO. A
Yeah.
rabbit can jump out of your ass and go kick you in the dick, right? So it's 80/20. I want to maximize the benefit of my work for the least amount of things so I can focus on what I would argue would be the most important things, right? So if I was doing an 80/20 principle, I'm not looking at every little thing, because if you run a Sitebulb, Screaming Frog, SEMrush audit, you just run those, you can get 1,000 things to do. And depending on how bad your site is, it could be 30,000 things, and then you're in the rabbit hole range. So what is the 80/20? The easiest things I can fix for the maximum amount of benefit. And 80/20 for technical SEO is, can it crawl it right? And are the silos built right? And the silos will drive that up and increase your crawl rate. And the second is speed. Is it so slow that a user comes to it and is like, oh my God, let me get off of it? If it is, then there's a technical thing that you can fix really quickly that will, if it's really bad, that will improve your SEO, but more importantly, it'll improve your conversions. And for technical SEO, those are the two things that I look at. The rest of it you can just run down over time, because they're not necessarily always going to have this massive, horrible impact unless it's something really, really bad. And if it's something really, really bad, it's probably affecting speed and crawl. So that's how I look at those. I don't,
I think
again, you can just rabbit hole down 30,000 different problems that your website has, and all of them have a lot. I've yet to look at a website that doesn't have an ass ton of technical stuff, and I mean, what's it? There are agencies that charge 10K a month that all they do is just chase down those little rabbits and put it in their Monday thing and have a call with their clients weekly saying, look what we fixed, right? You could potentially play that game all day long. But if you're looking for 80/20, I want to get it the biggest bang of the buck that's really most important, speed and curl. I had to see that.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, and I think Charles and I had a conversation about doing a show about this, which is, what problems are worth solving. Obviously, if you have 30,000 damn things, it's not 30,000 things that are preventing you from being number one. It's,
Yeah.
probably
No,
top
it's
five
it's one
things.
of 30,000 things. So
Mm.
for like
But
ecom,
if
for
you know it's
example,
that bad, if you have 30,000 things and you know it's that bad, that one thing is your 80/20 thing that you want to fix. So if
Mm.
I have 30,000 errors and one
yeah,
of them
but
is screwing with my crawl rate, guess what I'm gonna
yeah, that's oftentimes wishful thinking. Like with an ecom website, 80% of the time, the problem you have is an infinite crawl with Google.
Mm.
All right, so that's the 80% ecom problem.
you fix it like
But
your 80/20.
but you
How
can
you
have
fix
a
80%
problem
of the
that's in
problem.
the 20% that's utterly devastating, like
Mm.
a cookie overflow that's bringing up 500 errors when a certain ad displays on a page through a third-party ad network. And there's no way in hell the average SEO agency is going to find that problem, and the impact is devastating.
But a good technical SEO would know that, and that would be in his 80/20 when he did the analysis.
It wouldn't be in his 80/20.
Good technical.
That
I
is
mean, you thought of it on the fly, so you have
I didn't
experience.
think
You
of it
know
on the
that
fly. I worked at trying to figure out where those 500 errors came from for weeks until I found out it was in those third-party cookies on
Okay,
it.
so again,
Yeah,
back to reading the book of 80/20 principle, it's not even in the 80/20 because you just
it's
said
in the 20
you went exactly. So you
because the 20 is
biggest
one
bang
of
for your buck for the
30,000
fastest
things.
thing.
Yeah.
So 20% of the time, your problem's in the 10,000 different things. So that's the 80/20, is that 20% of the time you need someone specialized for what went wrong.
20%.
I
When
mean,
you're doing the biggest bang for your buck, you want to do it fast.
yeah,
Like I know you.
everybody's quick to say, "Oh, I can do the 5 things that'll help you out most of the time," but the 20% is where you need a specialist.
Well, I think the most of the time is the trick there. It's most of the time it'll solve it, but if it doesn't, then you got to go down the various rabbit holes, and those can take, days, weeks to potentially to solve.
Years.
Years, yeah. So question three, I'm gonna move us on because we're over time here. Does brand search affect the rankings for your organic keywords?
Uh,
There
yes.
is theory.
Yes, CTR does, and all channel marketing results in brand search. And so if CTR matters, then brand search matters. Yes.
Eh, because I think the emphasis here, and I see where I know where Clint was going to go, so I'll let you go down this thing because you're going to say probably very similar to what I'm going to say, Clint.
As I say, there is a theory that if you have high brand search, and ergo you are going to rank higher. And the point that Ted was making is if Charles Taylor Inc. is branded, and there's a lot of people looking for Charles Taylor Inc. And in this market space of Charles Taylor Inc., he does a article, and that article is seen. His CTR will be higher, and ultimately, if it's high and it gathers enough clicks, CTR, the theories behind nav boost say that it will increase its rankings. So that's how I call it more of an indirect effect. So if you have really good branding, and then someone in your market who is already been exposed to you, it would also ultimately nav boost would kick in and increase your ranking. But just because you have really good branding doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get better organic rankings.
I think if Google sees you have human traffic that didn't originate from search, that's the kind of CTR they like best.
Okay. So from what I've seen, sites that have lots of brand search and lots of brand traffic, like 95% of their, it's still tough to rank keywords sometimes. It definitely counts towards your authority. There's no question about that. And what is authority? I don't know. I couldn't define it too specifically, but there's an authority thing. One of the issues I've approached branding on is what does Google think your entity is? If Google thinks Clint Butler is all about website design and Lee Witcher is all about SEO optimization, those are the entities, that's how Google understands those entities, then a website that's written by Clint or about Clint that talks about website design will be more likely to rank, because the ranking factor is Clint Butler as a ranking factor involved in there, because Google understands who and what that entity is.
He's a topical entity for web design.
Right. And once you get a topic, and Clint, you've already kind of alluded to this, and I know we've talked about it before. Once an entity is established, good luck changing it, because Google likes to know what it knows, and it doesn't like changing its mind on anything.
And recently, fairly recently this year, Google has added a brand search widget to the search results where it shows you frequently searched brands in the keyword space. So there's physical evidence that Google is looking at this. So I would care about it going forward.
You should have been well, I caveat because I have more experience in overall marketing, but you should have been doing it from day one, like building your brand up, because that's how people remember you. That's why TV ad works and newspapers and podcasts and video. That's how all that advertising works, is by establishing your brand and associating you, etc. So, yeah, if people who are been in SEO since 2002 when the first SEO search engine come up now and start talking about how now brand is important, you really need to question them and their advice to you. Like Ted, Lee, Charles, there's a bunch of SEOs out there that have been telling you to do branding for fucking years. If it's new to you now, it better be new to you because you just started doing SEO.
There were black hat plays in the past for long tail traffic, but a lot of those plays are dead now. So those people are sorry out of luck. And so yeah, you want to do better, and it looks like Google is definitely doubling down on branded operations. All right. Let's see. So we are at the numbered questions. I'm currently working in a travel niche based off Nepal. I want to rank travels, tours, trek packages, but we simply get crushed by our big neighbor. Even though our content seems better than them in terms of overall content volume, recent information updates on it, plus other factors like internal linking. Is SEO all about backlinks? No, especially in travel tour related sites. You need to think about your third-party citations and reviews. So TripAdvisor, things like that can become critical. You also need to think about where people who are interested in traveling to a place are looking and going. And so for bicycle tours, it's really good to have a Paris bicycle tours YouTube channel where you're showing people how awesome these bicycle tours are. And sometimes the extreme travel content is what's going to get an awful lot of things. So like the street food, or they ate a coconut worm, or the weirdest things about an area often get the most targeted traffic for that area. And so you got to think in tangents for a lot of that stuff, and it's going to go beyond uh, just backlinks. You're going to have to actually get into content marketing to pull it off. What do you guys think?
Well, I spent a lot of years in this particular niche on the database marketing side and so forth. So I can tell you it's a big boys game, because the sites that you're competing against, like if you're looking at trips to Nepal, you're competing against the big travel consolidators, your Expedias and that sort of stuff. You're also competing against the large travel providers who provide trips around the world. They've got large sites, lots of backlinks, lots of traffic, lots of authority. And so they have the ability, if they throw up a trip to Nepal, it's going to rank because of just the internal dynamics of the entire, site that they've built. So if you're going to compete, you're going to have to go, like Ted said, you're going to have to compete with just dominate lower tail or longer tail keywords or very specialized keywords within that market. Because if you're thinking, oh, I write a bunch of blog articles about travel to Nepal and I'm going to beat out these big dogs, yeah, it's just not going to happen. It's just they've got way too much of an inherent advantage. So you've got to shift the field of play away from those, primary keywords.
There's big money in travel, and big money comes with big pocketbooks. So, yeah, if you're trying to beat them in an on-page only play, you're just wasting you're wasting your time.
Not going to happen.
But if you have a tour that most of the other tours, don't visit, like a specific type of temple in a specific country that most of the big boys don't have, you can capitalize on those. Or if you have something special, like, the best food that is reasonably safe, street food that's reasonably safe to eat because you go to it all the time and you've never had a bad experience with any of your tour visitors. Well, that's compelling to somebody who's nervous about it. And the big boys probably, can't play that game. So find the games the big boys can't play. If all you're selling is airfares to Nepal, yeah, you're gonna have a hard time. Um, let's see, where was I? All right, so Clint Butler, speaking of hat, at the Las Vegas digital event, I think that was Palmer and what's his name's event. Sorry, my brain just
Craig
failed
Campbell.
on
Yeah,
Craig Campbell. Boom. Sorry, Craig. Had your image in my face. I'm like, I know this name because this is like one of the most famous people in SEO. And
you need those glasses, the AI glasses you keep talking about.
no, I need
Recall.
electroshock therapy to get this thing fired up again. But yeah, they had a really great event, and Clint had a really good hat at that event. So.
I think it was new at the time. A little dirty now.
All right. Seems that a lot of people in the SEO industry are talking about informational search dying with AIO LLMs. What are your thoughts on this? I'd say keyword research is changing, and that's what I'm talking about at SEO Spring Training. So I agree. Change is happening. Change has already happened in many cases. And it's far more common now to hear the gripe, my rankings improved and my traffic went down. And so there are reasons why that is becoming a lot more commonplace.
Think
Go ahead.
it's information. It's not dying. I don't know what our industry's obsession with is dying. Things are dying. Nothing dies. It moves, it repositions to different things, and you have to approach things differently. Um, what is no longer going to be valuable to you is like going to people also ask and then writing 1,000 posts and answering 1,000 PAAs. It's just not. It's not. Shut up, Charles.
Charles in the private chat said SEO is dead with 3 exclamations.
I've been hearing SEO is dead for what, almost 20 years now.
Yeah, since you started SEO, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But
It's those are going to get less traffic. If you know what is SEO, if it's a real short answer and that's what the user is looking for, is just the fucking click nugget of what is SEO. AI overview is going to answer that, and people aren't going to go to it. But a higher converting audience member is actually going to land in your website. If they want to, if Lee Witcher in his big brain came and said, "What is SEO?" He's going to look at the AI overview thing, go, "Okay, that's interesting," and then he's going to scroll down and look for deeper research on it. And then Lee is actually more likely to convert on your page, your informational page, as a newsletter subscriber or whatever, um, coming from that search. So yes, I think yes, from informational terms, you are going to get less traffic, but that traffic is going to be a lot better quality.
SEOs, as SEOs, we get so, and I do this all the time too. I can't point too much, but we get so tactic focused, and then when one tactic stops working well, we're like, SEO is dead, it's all over. I mean, remember when the what were those article sites 15 years ago? They were like, you could just blast out article sites and get things ranking. That was wonderful. And then those went away.
Articles was the shit, man.
Yeah, easy articles. That was awesome. And then when that went away, everyone declared SEO was dead.
Yep.
And I had people telling me years after, well, SEO died years ago. I'm like, I don't think it has, because I'm still doing it every day. So yeah, the SEO is still going to exist. It's just the tactics are going to change and different things are going to be important. We were talking about branding earlier. Branding was never something you had to do, so everyone ignored it. Now it's something you definitely have to do. You should have always been doing it. It's just good business practice, but it wasn't required. Now it's something that's pretty much required as a barrier to entry, and so now it's a tactic. And when branding isn't needed anymore for whatever reason, if so, then everyone's going to say, "Oh my God, branding is dead, SEO is dead." No, it's just another tactic that's changed that you have to adjust. You have to understand what are the algorithms trying to do, and just try to move to it.
Yep.
Google has shifted preference, and so you have to shift with it.
I think it's
As long as
better,
there's algorithms.
honestly. I think the result is better. If I had 1,000 people coming to my webpage and my conversions sucked on 1,000 people, and Google dropped it to 100 and my conversions went up, I'll take that all day long.
All right, let's see. JP thinks the 20 and 80/20 should be more like 40 for most SEOs. So he's saying that there's a lot more technical that can go wrong than easy to fix. And he brings up entity poisoning, which is kind of what Clint was talking about when he changes a website to be seen as adult by Google. That's kind of what's going on there. And that looks like the end of the question. So it sounds like that it is the Craig Campbell conference in Vegas. Damn, I wish I would have knew about that sooner. That would be a fun one to do. Who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe
I hadn't
I'll
heard
look
about
into
it. I hadn't heard about it either.
Yeah.
They haven't done it again.
They haven't done it again.
No, I think Chris Palmer got a little PTSD from doing that conference.
Yeah, well, I'll bet it's one of the most stressful things you can do in SEO is run a conference. They're very
he went full retard. So when you schedule 2 full ballrooms in the Caesar's Palace, yeah, that you're just asking for drama.
Yeah. So I wish they'd do it again. That would be amazing. Craig is going to be in the spring training. That's correct. I saw him post. So yeah. Hope to see you there. It's gonna be awesome. It's very cool networking and hanging out. Just remember to go to the networking events because, at least 60% of the value is in the networking, meeting people that you can run things past down the road and talking about your specific issues. I mean, that's where I think the bulk of the value is being able to network. So if you're shy, break out of your shell. Don't stay in your hotel room. Go to the networking events, meet everyone. Um, and if you don't have a ticket, go check. Maybe you can do last minute. I know last year at spring training, there were people who decided day of and took last minute flights out. It is possible. So,
Yeah,
and
Samuels will take care of you if you show up.
yeah, Simon White is saying Chris Palmer is doing a small event in Vegas this year. So, Chris, if you still need to promote it, come let us know. We'll tell our audience about it. Um, all right. Thank you, everyone. We won't see you next week because we'll be at SEO spring training in Arizona. And so, all right. Hope to see you there. Take care.